Gary Miller again with the WIN series for college students, and I'm responding to some great questions that were posed to me. In fact, this will be a series of videos on the subject, and the subject is around GPAs. And boy, what are the importance of it? How do we weight them? And how should a student approach them? And also, how should an employer approach them? So the first video that I'm going to do now is from the employer's perspective, and the GPA doesn't matter. I remember the first company that adopted the hire on a whim principle um, that I ever worked with. We had a great discussion. I was with the leadership. We were in a room. I was standing in the middle of them. It was in a U shape, and we began talking about GPA. And I said, listen, I'm not a big fan of GPA cutoffs. And one of the leaders said, hold on, stop right there. I don't want to, let's not broach this subject. We've already been down that road. And as a company, we have a 3.3 GPA cutoff. And I said, all right, and what is the data that you use to determine that people with GPAs of 3.3 and higher are better performers than those with lower GPA? And the room got quiet, right? And I said, listen, I'm okay with cutoffs, but give me the data. Show me the data. The only thing I'm trying to do for you guys is prevent you guys from missing out on great employees, because I don't think there's a correlation. Now, what I'd love for you to do as the listener is, if you work for an organization or you have a sales team and you've seen a GPA correlation between success, I'd love to hear about it. Just put it in the notes there. I ran a very successful sales team for 10 years at a large pharmaceutical company and never saw a correlation. So that was my experience, and I've talked to obviously many others, and I've looked for the data and it's not there. So as we began talking about this issue, the head of sales raised his hand and said, gentlemen, I've been here for 25 years, and if we had a GPA cutoff when I was hired, guess what? And the room got even quieter. So my encouragement to you is if you have a GPA cutoff, make sure you justify it. I talk about that in chapters 3 and 4 in Hire on a Whim. So there's a discussion about that. I challenge the hiring managers to make sure that what they're doing is justified. What I look for in an applicant, if they have a GPA that is a little bit lower, all right, then I do look to make sure that they have a very active life. Have they been involved in activities, extracurricular activities? Are they leadership members of groups and clubs? Have they been working? And if they've been working, how many hours? So my whole point is, listen, your job at college as a student is to get great grades, right? That's your job. You have one job in the world. You got to do it well, right? So you can't be a disaster. But if you've decided to round out your education by being involved in varsity sports or intramural sports or fraternities, sororities, or other activities, then that means those hours are going to take away from your grades. But what I'm getting as the employer is a more well-rounded student, and I'll take that, because it's those activities that actually give me greater insight to the quality of the candidate than your GPA does, right? I have passed on candidates with a 4.0 or a 3.7 and instead hired the candidate with a 2.75 who played varsity sports for a year, who was a fraternity leader, who was president of this association or that association, and worked 10, 15 hours a week. That shows me industrious with their time. And they put their time to good use, right? And while they're putting their time to good use, they're discovering their gifts and their talents. And obviously that's incredibly important before I hire somebody. So from an employer standpoint, the GPA cutoff, not a fan. But you need to have the activity level to justify why you don't have a 3.75, right? So that's what I'm looking for. If you have a low GPA and it's a blank resume, then I'll probably pass on that person, right? If I have to make a snap decision. But if it's a low GPA, then I want to see a resume that's packed with activities that student has been busy with a purpose discovering themselves, right? So those are my takes on GPA. If you have other questions or other takes on it, I'd love to hear about it. Please post below, and and I'd love to continue this conversation. The next video is going to be for the student.